For weeks, I had imagined this day differently. My 18th birthday should have been a milestone, a celebration marking the end of one chapter and the beginning of another. I pictured my friends laughing around a cake I had chosen, my parents raising glasses to toast my accomplishments, the soft hum of music blending with the warm glow of lanterns strung around the backyard. But none of that was real. None of it was mine. Instead, I stood at the edge of our backyard deck, a glass of sparkling cider trembling slightly in my hand, watching a crowd of people I barely knew cheer for my sister Emily. She was at the center of it all, radiant and smug, wrapped in a champagne gold dress that seemed to swallow the light around her. Above her, a cake towered in 3 gleaming layers, golden frosting dripping like honey over the edges, and in bold, glittering numbers, 18 crowned the top. Beneath it, a message in looping cursive declared her name, Emily Hart. I had thought my parents were joking when they said, "You'll have your turn, Lena. Let Emily enjoy this one." 2 days ago, Emily had insisted she needed to celebrate her 18th again because last year's party wasn't big enough and people didn't see her glow up. My parents laughed as though this was the funniest thing they'd ever heard. My mother spent weeks coordinating with caterers, photographers, and florists, ensuring every detail aligned with Emily's favorite color. Every element screamed Emily. And me? I was just supposed to be a good sport. The irony stung. I had helped plan this party. I had strung half the lights 2 nights ago, arranged the flowers, chosen the playlist, even helped Mom coordinate the appetizers. Every detail was meant to be a shared effort, a family memory. Instead, it felt like I had designed my own eraser, erasing myself for someone else. The crowd laughed and clinked glasses as the MC cleared his throat and raised a champagne flute. I straightened my posture, hoping that maybe, just maybe, he would call my name. The moment came and went. Let's give a warm round of applause for Emily Hart, turning 18 again. Cameras flashed, glasses clinked, cheers erupted. My mother mouthed, "Smile, Lena," from across the table, her practiced face perfect for the cameras. I forced a polite smile, clapping, my hands trembling slightly with every flash of light. Emily walked up to the stage, the fairy lights behind her twinkling like 1,000 eyes. She grabbed the microphone, tossed her hair, and said with a playful smirk, "Thank you for celebrating me again. Who says you can only turn 18 once, right?" Laughter filled the air, the kind that feels rehearsed and hollow. I felt the warmth of tears gathering behind my eyes, but swallowed them, letting the corners of my mouth stretch into a forced smile. I moved closer to the stage, thinking maybe I could still say something, even a small acknowledgement. But before I could step onto the wooden stairs, my mother's hand touched my arm. Her nails were painted the same gold as the table runners. "Let Emily do it first," she whispered. "We don't want to confuse people." Confuse people. The words echoed in my mind like a cruel joke, as if my own birthday was a nuisance, an inconvenience. I backed away and found myself at the garden's edge. The laughter, the clinking glasses, the DJ's pop remixes, they all blended into a low, overwhelming hum, something that felt almost unreal. The night smelled of champagne and roses, sweet to the point of suffocation. I watched Emily surrounded by her friends, twirling and laughing as if the world belonged entirely to her. One of her friends passed by, noticing me standing alone. She whispered to another, "Did anyone even notice her?" And it cut deeper than I expected. I looked at my parents. Dad was shaking hands with his business partner, smiling and nodding like he was part of the celebration. Mom posed for a photo with Emily, laughing into the camera, her pride unmistakable. And me? In that glittering, perfect frame, I wasn't even a shadow. I felt the sting of years I had spent supporting Emily's life. Cheerleading competitions, school elections, birthday gifts. Being invisible yet again. Every sacrifice I had made, every moment I had spent helping her shine, felt like it had built a wall between me and being seen. Tears blurred my vision. I clutched my glass of cider tighter and whispered under my breath, almost to no one, "Happy birthday to me." And then I turned away before anyone could see the cracks in my smile. The music from the backyard felt distant now, a low thrum behind me as I walked across the lawn. The hem of my dress brushed against dew-soaked grass, my heels sinking into the dirt. It was the first moment in hours I felt entirely alone in the world. I remembered the scrapbook I had made for Emily when I was 15. She barely flipped through it before tossing it aside, calling it cute but trivial compared to what Mom could buy her. That memory burned like acid in my chest. I had promised myself back then, amidst the quiet despair of being overlooked, that one day I would build something that couldn't be ignored. But the promise felt fragile now, as I stood in the shadow of a party that wasn't mine, watching someone else take center stage in the story of my life. The night air pressed against my skin as I wandered further from the house, the sounds of celebration fading into the distance. Somewhere deep inside, a small, stubborn flame of determination flickered. I didn't know what it meant yet, or how it would shape my next steps, but I knew one thing for certain. 18 had arrived, and it had brought with it not just invisibility, but a sharp, painful clarity. I could no longer stay hidden. If the world wouldn't celebrate me, I would find a way to make myself seen. The party didn't slow down. It only intensified. Music pulsed from the DJ's booth, bass shaking through the polished wooden deck and vibrating into my chest. The laughter, the chatter, the clinking of glasses, it all merged into a cacophony I couldn't escape. I drifted from corner to corner, a ghost among the living, observing the celebration that had been meticulously designed for someone else. Every detail screamed Emily: the gold ribbons, the glittering balloons, the custom cocktails with her name etched in cursive. And there I was, the birthday girl, invisible in my own house. I tried to slip into the background, letting my presence be felt only in the peripheral shadows. People smiled politely as they passed me, asking polite questions about school or work, but never about me, about my day, about the milestone I had been anticipating for months. I realized then how easy it had been for my existence to fade into irrelevance. Everyone around me was performing roles, friends complimenting Emily's dress, distant cousins sharing inside jokes, neighbors murmuring praises at my parents' generosity. But no one asked about Lena, the actual 18-year-old. I wandered near the buffet table, the scent of truffle pasta and roasted salmon curling around my senses, tempting me to reach for something to ground myself in reality. But food felt irrelevant when every ounce of my being was focused on survival. Survival of my dignity, of my pride, of the last shreds of excitement I had nurtured for this day. I thought about all the nights I had stayed up helping Emily, printing her campaign posters, editing essays, designing flyers for her events, making last-minute corrections to her cheerleading routines. And every time my parents would nod, smile, and remind me gently, "You're such a good sister. She's lucky to have you." Lucky. Always someone else's luck, someone else's light, someone else's moment. I drifted to the edge of the deck, near the oak trees wrapped in string lights. The golden glow reflected off the leaves, creating patterns that danced across my face. I tried to memorize them, to hold on to something beautiful that was mine alone, even if the rest of the night felt like it belonged to Emily. I thought about my childhood, how it had been defined by shadows. I had learned early on that quiet helpfulness was rewarded with nods, smiles, and gratitude, but never recognition, never admiration. I remembered sitting in the front row at her cheerleading competitions, holding flowers for her, clapping until my hands hurt. I remembered staying up late to edit her essays when she was too tired, when I could have been practicing my own art, my own designs, my own voice. I remembered smiling through every comparison, hearing teachers say, "You're Emily's little sister. She's just wonderful," as though my existence were only meaningful in reference to her brilliance. The memory made my chest ache. The crowd continued, oblivious to my inner struggle. People moved around me like I was air, their voices washing over me but never touching me. Emily floated through the crowd like a golden sun, her laugh ringing out, bright and practiced, as if rehearsed for maximum effect. Every glance in her direction made my stomach twist. I tried to focus on the details, the way the light shimmered in the champagne glasses, the way the lanterns cast soft shadows across the garden. But even those small beauties couldn't distract me from the gnawing emptiness that had grown in my chest. I spotted Mom laughing with the neighbors, leaning in close to Emily, capturing perfect Instagram moments. Dad shook hands with his business partner again, clapping Emily on the back, his pride palpable. And I stood there, invisible, unnoticed, unremarkable. It was a strange, surreal feeling to be surrounded by people and yet feel completely alone. The hum of conversation, the sparkle of light, the faint thrum of music, all of it underscored the reality. My life, my birthday, my milestone had been swallowed whole by someone else's ego. I tried to tell myself it didn't matter, that what counted was the intention, the effort, the memories I could hold privately. But intention felt hollow when everyone else's laughter drowned out my own existence. I thought of Emily's friends, girls I didn't know, laughing and sharing secrets I would never hear. One of them passed me, whispering to another, "Did anyone notice she was even here?" The words cut through me sharper than I expected. Invisible. That was what I had become. Invisible. Not unnoticed in the ordinary sense, but rendered irrelevant. A supporting character in my own story. I drifted into the garden, letting the string lights flicker across the grass at my feet. My heels sank into the soil, and the cool dew soaked my dress. The air was fragrant, heavy with roses and champagne, almost suffocating in its sweetness. I pressed my arms to my chest, trying to create a boundary between myself and the world that refused to acknowledge me. For a moment, I closed my eyes and let the sounds wash over me, the laughter, the glasses, the music, and allowed myself a single thought. Why am I even here? I remembered the scrapbook I had made for Emily when I was 15. Handmade pages, stickers, photos, and drawings. I had poured hours, weeks, maybe even months into it. I had presented it with hope in my heart, expecting perhaps a small acknowledgement, a smile, a "Thank you, Lena." Instead, she had tossed it aside, casually remarking, "It's cute, but Mom's buying me an iPad, so maybe you could have just saved your allowance." I had swallowed the sting then, convinced myself that love was enough, that support was enough. But now, as I watched her bathe in the attention I had longed for, I realized that no amount of silent sacrifice or behind-the-scenes work would ever earn me recognition in this house. Tears prickled at the corners of my eyes. I tried to blink them away, tried to focus on something else, the flickering lights, the crisp night air, the feel of grass beneath my feet. But the ache didn't go away. My parents had not seen me. No one had seen me. Even in a house full of people, I felt alone, as if I had been invisible my entire life. Only now the truth was undeniable. I hugged my arms tighter, letting the night settle around me. And yet amid the loneliness, a small ember of something else began to burn. A quiet, stubborn spark of defiance. I didn't know what it meant yet, or how it would manifest, but I knew that tonight, the invisible birthday girl had felt the sharp clarity of her existence. And for the first time, I began to understand that if no one else would celebrate me, I might have to celebrate myself. I wandered further into the garden, the soft glow of string lights casting shifting shadows over the dewy grass. The laughter from the backyard party drifted faintly through the air, carried by the music and the hum of conversations. Somewhere between the clinking glasses and the DJ's upbeat tracks, I felt a strange, hollow sensation settle in my chest. It wasn't sadness alone. It was something heavier, a mix of anger, frustration, and aching invisibility that had been building for years. I sank onto the damp grass, my heels left abandoned beside me, my dress brushing against the wet blades. The cool night air clung to my skin, wrapping me in a strange sense of calm amidst the chaos I had left behind. I thought of Emily again, twirling in her golden dress, the center of every camera flash and whispered compliment. And I thought of myself, the girl who had spent years curating a perfect life for someone else, quietly standing behind the scenes while everyone else clapped for her sister. It hit me then with the sharpness of a knife. I had spent my entire childhood trying to earn recognition that would never come. I had stayed up late editing Emily's essays, designed every poster and scrapbook, carried her flowers, cheered for her every success, and smiled through every comparison. And what had it gotten me? A night where my own birthday existed only as a shadow behind hers. My parents had never seen me. Not really. My sister had never seen me, not truly. And even now, as I watched her laugh and spin under the glow of string lights, it felt as though my own life had been waiting in line for recognition that would never arrive. Tears burned at the corners of my eyes. I pressed my palms into my face, trying to stop them from falling. But the weight of everything, the years of being overlooked, the countless sacrifices, the loneliness in a house full of people, was too heavy. My breathing quickened. I felt a trembling in my hands, a fluttering in my chest that spoke of panic, of heartbreak, of a quiet fury that had been simmering for far too long. I remembered the scrapbook again, the one I had made for Emily at 15. I had filled it with pages of memories, sketches, stickers, and love, all painstakingly crafted. I had hoped she might glance at it and see me, see the thought and effort behind every page. But she had tossed it aside, glancing only briefly, saying, "It's cute, but Mom's buying me an iPad, so maybe you could have just saved your allowance." I remembered the sinking feeling, the first sting of invisibility that had clung to me like a shadow ever since. And now, 3 years later, the same story had repeated itself on a grander, more public scale. I stood slowly, brushing grass from my dress, my hands shaking slightly. I could still hear the party behind me, the music, the laughter, the clinking glasses, and it all felt alien, like I was observing someone else's life from the outside. I thought about my parents' smiles, their pride, their carefully orchestrated joy. But that joy had never included me. I had been trained to help, to support, to assist, to fade, and tonight, the consequences were laid bare in front of me. A strange clarity settled over me, cutting through the fog of hurt and tears. I realized that I had spent my life expecting someone else to validate my existence, to recognize my worth, to see me as more than the helpful younger sister or the invisible twin of Emily. And expecting validation from people who never truly saw me was like holding water in cupped hands. No matter how tightly you tried, it always slipped away. I walked to the edge of the garden, near the iron gate that opened onto the quiet street beyond. I looked back at the glowing house, the laughter spilling out in golden waves, and felt an unfamiliar combination of grief and resolve. This was my breaking point. I couldn't continue living in a world where my life was always the backdrop, my achievements always eclipsed by someone else's spotlight. I wanted to be seen, I wanted to be recognized, and I wanted to stop asking for permission to exist. I knelt briefly to untangle my shoes, shoving them aside, and let the cool night soil press against my bare feet. The roughness of the asphalt beyond the gate called to me. Something whispered from the dark, a quiet urging I couldn't ignore. Go. And without fully understanding why, I stepped off the lawn, off the path I had walked so dutifully my entire life, and onto the quiet street beyond. For years I had let the weight of others' expectations dictate my path. I had measured my worth in their applause, in their smiles, in their recognition. But tonight, the applause was for someone else. And tonight, I realized that if I stayed, if I continued waiting for someone else to acknowledge me, I would spend my whole life invisible, a supporting character in the story of someone else. The street was cool, heavy with the scent of rain-soaked grass. I felt the night air sweep across my skin, lifting loose strands of hair and brushing against my shoulders. For the first time in as long as I could remember, I felt a strange and frightening sense of liberation. My heart raced, not just with fear, but with the exhilarating possibility that I could leave, that I could step into a world where no one's expectations mattered, where no one dictated who I was allowed to be. I remembered all the small promises I had made to myself over the years, to pursue my dreams of design, to create something that couldn't be ignored, to carve out a place in the world that belonged to me alone. Those promises, once fragile and naive, now felt like lifelines. And tonight, as I stepped further into the night, away from the house and the party that had never been mine, I understood something profound. Breaking free wasn't a failure. It was a beginning. I paused at the corner of the street, staring back at the glowing house one last time. The laughter, the flashing cameras, the golden lights, they felt like a different world, a world I had outgrown. My dress was stained with dew and dirt. My feet were sore and scratched, but I felt awake in a way I hadn't before. A quiet, determined energy hummed beneath my skin. For the first time, I realized that my life didn't need to wait for anyone else's approval. I didn't need to fade anymore. And with that thought, I turned toward the unknown. The street stretched ahead, quiet and waiting, a path that promised both uncertainty and possibility. I didn't know exactly where I was going or what I would find, but for the first time, I felt that whatever came next would be mine, entirely mine, and no one could take that away. The night air was cool against my skin as I walked barefoot down the nearly empty street, each step a sharp reminder that I had left the house behind, left the party, my parents, Emily, and every expectation that had bound me for as long as I could remember. The asphalt was rough, scraped at my heels and toes, but I didn't care. Every step away from that glowing mansion felt like shedding a layer of my old life, a layer that had never truly been mine. The distant laughter and music from the party became a low hum, fading into the background, until all that remained was me and the dark, wide streets stretching into possibility. I clutched my small purse tightly, containing my phone, my charger, my sketchbook, and the $600 I had saved from a summer internship. It was hardly enough to feel secure, hardly enough to guarantee anything, but it was a beginning, a token of independence that I could take with me, tangible evidence that I was finally doing something for myself. For the first time, I didn't feel like I was waiting for permission or approval. I was choosing. My mind raced as I walked. For years, I had imagined this moment differently. I thought I would leave quietly, carefully, after a small, polite argument with my parents. I had imagined them noticing, calling my name, begging me to stay. But no one had come. No one had even realized I was gone. And strangely, that absence, that final act of invisibility, gave me clarity. It was no longer about escaping the party. It was about escaping the life I had lived up to that point, the life where my existence had been contingent on someone else's recognition. I reached the bus stop on South Congress, the metal bench cold beneath my fingers. I sat down, crossing my legs and tucking my skirt against the damp cold, feeling the weight of everything I had left behind pressing against my chest. My dress was streaked with dirt, my feet bleeding slightly, but the pain grounded me in reality, a reminder that I was alive, moving, making a choice. My sketchbook rested on my lap, a sanctuary of my creativity and dreams, its pages filled with designs and ideas that no one had seen or valued yet. I stared up at the electronic billboard across the street. One moment it displayed an advertisement for a luxury restaurant, and the next it flickered to a sweeping skyline, tall buildings glinting under a sunrise. I took it as a sign, a subtle nudge that the world was bigger than the one I had been confined to. It promised opportunity, challenge, and the chance to redefine myself. And in that fleeting glow, I decided, New York. It was the only place I had ever imagined being large enough, loud enough, and unafraid enough to contain my ambitions. I pulled out my phone and searched for the next available bus leaving for New York. 45 minutes. Enough time to breathe, to steel myself, to imagine a new life. I booked the ticket without hesitation, the confirmation dinging softly in my ears, a small sound that carried with it the weight of revolution and liberation. I looked around at the empty street, the quiet cars passing, the distant glow of city lights. The world felt vast, terrifying, and exhilarating all at once. As I waited, I reflected on the life I had been leaving behind. My parents, who had never truly seen me. Emily, whose life had always overshadowed mine. My own sacrifices, my quiet efforts, my years of fading into the background, supporting someone else's story while mine remained untold. And now, I realized that all of that could become fuel. The invisibility, the neglect, the constant comparisons. These could be the driving force behind the life I was about to build. I opened my sketchbook and flipped through the pages, my fingers tracing over designs I had once hesitated to show anyone. Bedroom layouts, architectural sketches, furniture designs, color palette teats. All of it was mine. All of it was proof that I existed, that I could create, that I had a vision. My hands shook slightly as I thought about the months ahead, the unknown city, the new challenges, the need to survive on my own. But underneath the nervousness was a quiet thrill, a certainty that I was finally doing something, moving towards something, and for the first time, I was doing it entirely for myself. The faint sound of tires on wet asphalt reminded me that the bus was approaching. I rose, gathering my purse, my sketchbook, my courage. My reflection in the glass panel of the bus shelter caught my attention, my makeup smudged, mascara streaking beneath my eyes, hair tousled from the night air. I didn't look polished or perfect, but I looked awake, determined, real. The girl staring back at me no longer resembled the one who had stood quietly, unnoticed, at her own birthday party. This girl had taken her first real step into autonomy. The bus pulled up, its yellow lights cutting through the darkness like beacons. The driver, a man in his 50s with tired eyes and a kind expression, glanced at me and said, "Late night." I smiled faintly, a tremor in my lips, and replied, "Something like that." I stepped onto the bus, my small suitcase rattling against the metal floor. I found a window seat, staring out at the receding streets, at the house where I had grown invisible, at the party that had cemented my breaking point. As the bus started to move, the city lights blurred past me, stretching into lines of gold and silver. For the first time, I allowed myself to breathe fully, deeply. The hum of the engine, the quiet murmur of other passengers, the occasional honk from a distant car, all of it blended into a symphony of possibility. I thought about my goals, my dreams of design, architecture, and art, and the realization hit me. I no longer needed anyone's permission to chase them. I was allowed to exist, to be loud, to take up space, to be noticed. I leaned my head against the window, feeling the cool glass press against my cheek. My heart still raced and my stomach fluttered with a mixture of fear and exhilaration. But above it all, there was clarity. I was finally moving forward. I was finally acting for myself. The tears I had held back at the party, the silent cries of invisibility and neglect, had transformed into resolve. I would no longer wait for recognition. I would create it. The streets of Austin faded into the distance, replaced by the dark expanse of highway and possibilities. Somewhere ahead lay a city I had only dreamed of, a city vast and indifferent, yet full of opportunities to claim, to explore, and to conquer. And as the bus hummed steadily onward, I whispered to myself, barely audibly over the engine, "This is it. This is my beginning." For the first time in my life, I felt that freedom, the freedom to leave, the freedom to grow, the freedom to be the person I had always wanted to be. And though the road ahead was unknown, though the city awaited with challenges and uncertainties, I knew that this leap, this night, this moment of choice, would define the rest of my life. The bus hummed steadily as it carried me further from Austin, further from the party, further from everything that had defined my life up to this point. The streets blurred past the window, streaks of amber and silver reflecting in my eyes. My sketchbook rested in my lap, a sacred object containing dreams, visions, and fragments of a girl who had spent years waiting to be seen. For the first time, it felt like more than paper. It felt like proof that I existed, proof that my voice mattered, proof that I was finally stepping into a story that was mine. I leaned against the window, the engine's vibrations steady and grounding. My feet were sore, my dress still stained with grass and dirt, my makeup smudged from tears I had long held back. Yet beneath all that, there was a strange, exhilarating clarity. The girl staring back at me in the reflection wasn't invisible anymore. She was real. She was awake. She was beginning. For hours, I replayed the events of the night in my mind. Emily twirling under golden lights, cameras flashing, laughter ringing hollowly through the backyard. My parents' faces, frozen in smiles that never reached their eyes when they looked at me. The MC calling her name, the cake emblazoned with her glittering letters. And I, silent, trembling, fading into the background. The memories, once sharp and painful, had now transformed into fuel. Anger, heartbreak, neglect. They had been my chains, but now they became wings. I thought about my childhood again, the years of helping, supporting, sacrificing. The cheerleading competitions, the school projects, the posters, the flowers, the scrapbooks, the late nights editing essays. Each memory had once been a reminder of my place in the shadows. But now I realized they were training grounds, preparation for the life I was about to carve for myself. All the overlooked effort, all the comparisons, all the silent support, they had taught me discipline, creativity, resilience. And tonight, they would become the foundation of my freedom. The highway stretched endlessly ahead, dark and unknown, but I felt no fear. The bus lights glimmered across my face, illuminating the determination that had taken root in my chest. New York awaited, vast and intimidating, but that vastness no longer frightened me. It beckoned me. It promised anonymity, yes, but also opportunity, a chance to be seen not for who I was expected to be, but for who I truly was. I opened my sketchbook again, tracing the edges of a half-finished bedroom design. The lines were rough, the proportions imperfect, but they were mine. For the first time, I allowed myself to imagine a future where these ideas mattered, where I could build and create on my own terms. A world where no one's approval dictated my worth. A city where I could finally take up space and demand recognition for myself, not as Emily's sister, not as a background character, but as Lena Hart, the girl who had finally stepped forward. Sleep crept in slowly, and I let my head fall back against the window, but my mind stayed alive with thoughts of possibility. I thought of the challenges ahead, the unknown city, the unfamiliar streets, the struggle of living alone for the first time, the need to navigate a world without guidance or safety nets. And yet, amid the anxiety, there was exhilaration. Every challenge was a test I had chosen willingly. Every unknown was a door I was opening on purpose. And with each mile, I felt the past loosening its grip, the shadows of neglect and invisibility fading behind me. As the bus rolled through small towns and stretches of dark highway, I felt a subtle shift inside me. It wasn't a dramatic transformation, no instant relief from years of pain. It was quieter than that. A sense of solidity, a steadiness I had never felt before. I wasn't running from something anymore. I was moving toward something. Toward a life that could be mine. Toward a future where birthdays would matter. Not because someone else declared it, but because I would choose to celebrate myself. Hours later, I glimpsed the skyline of New York in the distance, jagged and brilliant against the morning sky. The towering buildings glinted like promises in the rising sun. My heart fluttered with anticipation, a mixture of nervousness and exhilaration. I gripped my sketchbook tighter, imagining the possibilities, apartments I could design, studios I could work in, projects I could complete, spaces I could transform. The city was enormous, overwhelming, indifferent, and perfectly suited to my ambitions. Here I could be anyone I wanted. Here I could finally be seen. The bus rolled into the station, its brakes screeching softly against the pavement. I stepped down, my legs shaky but determined. The air smelled of exhaust and coffee and possibility. People bustled past me, strangers with their own lives, their own hurried concerns. I felt small among them, yes, but not invisible. Not anymore. Every step I took away from the bus, every turn toward the unfamiliar streets, every inhale of the city air was a declaration. I am here. I exist. I matter. I found a small cafe nearby, its windows fogged from warmth inside. I ordered a cup of coffee, black and bitter, and took a seat by the window, my sketchbook open before me. As the sunlight streamed in, catching dust particles and golden rays, I felt a quiet contentment settle over me. This was my moment. Not a party designed by someone else, not applause given out of obligation, not smiles that never reached the eyes. I was finally giving myself the recognition I had always deserved. I traced my fingers over the pages of my sketches, imagining all the rooms I would design, all the lives I would touch through my work. And as I sipped my coffee, letting the warmth spread through me, I whispered softly, a promise to myself. This is my life, my story, my birthday, my beginning. For the first time, I felt whole. Not celebrated by others, not validated by comparisons, not acknowledged by those who had ignored me for years, but whole, seen, alive. And that, I realized, was worth more than any party, any golden cake, any fleeting applause. This was mine, entirely mine, and I would never let it be stolen again. The city buzzed outside, indifferent and relentless, but I felt ready. Ready to take on challenges, ready to claim my space, ready to create and build and live entirely for myself. I didn't know exactly what lay ahead, how long it would take to carve out a life I could call my own, but for the first time, I didn't care. I was 18. I was free. And for the first time, my birthday was truly my own.